Welcome to Tropes and Traumas, where books hurt us.
And we love it anyways. Welcome back, you guys. We have a sweet little treat for you guys this week, and that is going to be Short Story Saturday, where we will be posting a prompt in the beginning of the week. We are going to be writing short stories in regards to this prompt, and we're going to read them to you guys. So if you guys like it, comment, subscribe, and let us know what you guys think. We are not professional writers, so disclaimer there. We are just
Right.
writing for fun. It's something we love. So we figured we'd add it into our little book club. So join us. We're going to be starting off this week with this week's prompt. If only that really happened. She looked in the mirror, her tiara glistening from the sunlight peeking through her bathroom window. She turned her head slowly from left to right, watching the tiara twinkle. She smiled so wide, it was as if her freshly whitened teeth were trying to escape. She felt perfect. Her silk, white, strapless gown made her a princess dream come true. Happiness oozed from her entire being. She reached down to the counter to pick up her white lace gloves. She put them on, admiring her brown hair updo. Then she remembered him and wondered if he felt just as much happiness as she did today. She reached in her pocket for her phone, and yes, her dress had pockets. When she opened her phone, she saw that it was 1 minute ago that he texted her, stating, "I am so happy to be marrying such a beautiful person on such a beautiful day." Her smile widened, which you wouldn't think is possible, but somehow he could always make her smile like that. If she kept smiling this hard, she knew she would have sore cheeks. But that's the price she would pay for happiness. She put her phone back in her pocket and opened the bathroom door to find a group of her favorite people waiting outside. Her mother turned around at the sound of the door opening. Her smile grew when she saw her daughter, and her eyes welled with so many emotions. But the future bride knew her mother, as she always did, supporting her and loving her unconditionally. Her favorite cousin then shouted, "You look so beautiful!" and burst out into tears, running towards the bride for a hug. It was hard for the bride to see her cousin cry, because she always wanted to be the source of light for the women she admired the most. She was the big sister to the bride. Now, here she is again, being the rock in the room that the bride was always lucky to have. Her aunt stood back, giving her the space that she needed so she didn't get overwhelmed. She always knew how to be there in the most comforting ways that made sure the bride never felt alone. Her aunt slowly walked to the bride's mother and held her hand, as they were always there to make sure the bride could get through anything. In fact, they were more of best friends when it came to taking care of the bride, and they never let their own pride get in the way of the love they had for the bride to be. The bride's father came around the corner with a glass of champagne. When his eyes landed on the bride, he almost dropped his glass. "I have never seen you so happy." The bride nodded. "I love him, Daddy, and he loves me even more." She could see the pride beam from him. She was beyond happy. She was filled with love, and she knew she was surrounded by the love she deserved. Suddenly, the soon-to-be bride was ripped away from her dream as a knock came to the door. She was back in the dark, filthy bathroom, her eyes filled with tears and this nagging feeling in her heart that screamed. She deserved more than just being someone of convenience for someone she absolutely loved. Her boyfriend's voice came through the door, asking, "Are you okay?" "Yeah," she replied, wiping her eyes, knowing that that was a complete lie. She reached in her pocket from her phone to see her messages from her mother, upset that she had left the house for that boyfriend of hers. Knowing she had things to do, she rolled her eyes, feeling alone and completely unsupported as usual. She then opened up her text message from her favorite cousin, who she hasn't seen in years, and decided that probably wasn't the best idea since she had her own life going on in a whole nother state. She thought about her aunt, who she just assumed, who had been so consumed by her own life to see anything else. Which, I mean, was fair, because isn't everyone always? She thought of her dad and how distant he was, even if he was sitting right next to her, and laughed at the parallel he played in her daydream. She picked up both of her hands and rubbed them across her forehead to pull her hair back, as though rubbing away her thoughts. She washed her hands and put on the smallest smile because she didn't have the strength to smile any bigger. She opened the door to the bathroom and went back to the life of uncertainty and loneliness, wishing if only that really happened and she surrounded herself by the love she thought she deserved.
Wow.
What'd you think?
It was great. Definitely brought me into it strongly. Like, I was like, oh my God, I was so happy for the bride. Just picturing everything. There was a lot of visualism for it. And I mean, I guess that's how most people would want to feel during that type of day, during their wedding day. It's that happiness, being surrounded by the people that they know will help celebrate your happiness with you. And everyone's just happy together.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's always different dynamics when it comes to families, and all you can wish for is on those special days that everyone can kind of just come together and be the best that they can be on that day. And the contrast of what her actual reality was definitely devastating. But I mean, I feel like that's how it is with a lot of daydreams. You kind of were picturing the perfect scenarios.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's just either not what it is right now, or I mean, who knows? That might still be something that comes to happen in the future with time and work. But for the moment, everything still just sucks when you realize it's not exactly what you had been hoping for.
Yeah. I feel like when I made this, my biggest takeaway was accepting the love that you think you deserve. I think that's why I added it at the end there. That line actually comes from The Perks of Being a Wallflower. It
Okay.
was my favorite line from that book. But I just like that whole theme in general because I definitely think like my character in her moment, she was at a place where she felt like she deserved more, but was she didn't think she deserved it, and I think that's why she accepted the reality instead of creating the dream world. Because I mean, we all do have the power at the end of the day to create our lives. Sometimes we don't see it that way, but for all of you guys out there, I definitely think if you're ever in a situation and you're looking at your life and you're like, I wish it was a different way, change it. You can find people to surround yourself who will act that way. And it may not be your mom, it may not be your dad, it may not be your aunt, but there are people out there. You just have to keep looking and don't settle.
Family is definitely who you make it.
Yes.
I've definitely learned that in life. And
But I'm going to let you go ahead and read yours next.
could you repeat the prompt, please?
If only that really happened.
Amelia was a bookworm, a loner, and a bookworm. She spent most of her free time in the community's oldest library reading whatever book had the most creative cover and intriguing title. Somehow she always found the right one. Once she did, she'd curl up in the corner with the mildest sunlight, mostly blocked because of the weeping willow right outside the window beside her. One rain-stormy day, she'd finally returned her latest find and was on a mission to find another world to plant herself in. As she was browsing, she smelled the scent of fresh bread, maybe a pastry of some sort, which was quite unusual, mostly because food was definitely not allowed in the library, but also because she was quite accustomed to the smell of books, old and new. This was her sanctuary, and so anything different was brought to her attention rather quickly. She didn't necessarily try to ignore it, but sort of followed its lead as she grazed through the aisles of her favorite section of the library, letting her fingers glide along the spines of each book, hoping one would create the familiar magnetic feeling she got at her fingertips when just the right book found her. Just as the smell seemed to fill her nostrils to the brim, she felt that spark at the tip of her index, but this time it was warm, as there was another finger touching the same book. The startle was sudden, but slightly familiar, because the familiar feeling she was used to actually felt a little stronger than usual this time. That other finger was attached to another girl about the same age, wearing a sweater with very long sleeves. One hand reaching for the book, and the other mostly hidden but close to her mouth. She seemed to be nibbling on something. She was definitely where that smell was coming from, and it made Amelia's tummy rumbled wantingly. You know you're not supposed to be eating in here, right? Amelia was trying not to sound bossy, but she held a certain respect for this space and mostly followed the rules because it felt right. Even though she thought whatever the food the girl was munching on smelled delicious. I mean, it smells really good though. She was hoping to lighten up the situation because the girl had made a face that said, "Really?" It was almost like she'd rolled her eyes without actually doing so. The other girl didn't even respond aside from her change in facial expression. Instead, she grabbed at the book and pulled it into her free hand and turned it so as to read the excerpt on the back. Still munching on whatever was up her sleeve, her eyes seemed to start glowing as she read. This made Amelia jealous and sort of antsy because she'd also wanted to read said book and was extremely intrigued by the girl's reaction. She knew it had to be a good story because she'd never picked up a bad one before, ever. Well, what's it say? Who's the author? Amelia was hoping either question would finally get the girl to speak, and she did, but the voice did not match the look of the girl at all. She spoke with a slightly raspy voice that definitely didn't match her age. Well, it's going to be a pretty dark story, that's for sure. And the author, Hoffman, ever read any of their stuff? Amelia was instantly excited to reveal that Hoffman was actually one of her favorite authors. She was also surprised to have found one she had probably not read yet, since her familiar feelings never happened twice over the same book. Her body always knew to skip over the book she'd already read. Your favorite author, huh? Have you read this one yet? The girl flipped the book over to reveal the cover to Amelia. It looked amazing. The artwork was as appealing to the eye as ever and just the right amount of spooky. She almost reached for it, but the other girl quickly flipped it open with one hand and had begun reading it and was already walking away with it. Amelia stared after her, slightly annoyed because that should have been her next read, her next story to dive into. She followed the girl in a familiar direction and ended up in her favorite corner. The girl plopped down, reading and munching simultaneously. Amelia didn't know how to respond to any of this. Every bit of this was disconcerting and just wrong. Did you want something? The other girl was speaking between bites, not even bothering to look up from the book. Well, this is kind of my spot. You're in my favorite reading spot. Amelia was never good with confrontation, but this indeed was her spot. She'd been coming to this library and sitting in this exact corner for as long as she could remember. Well, the other girl said slightly mockingly, you're not currently reading anything, and you don't even have a book in your hand, so... Amelia was slightly taken aback. Well, she said, keeping with the theme, that's because you took that book out from under me. I know you noticed we'd both reached for that same book. The other girl glanced up quickly, with the teeniest smirk. Sorry, I guess. I kind of assumed that as this is your favorite author, you'd have read this already. Hope you don't mind sharing your author with me. Want a bite? Still reading, she reached up her other arm to slowly reveal a giant loaf of French bread that had previously been hidden in her sleeve. It was stuffed with some sort of cream and jelly, and it gave off a warmth as if it had still been fresh from an oven. Amelia couldn't help but laugh. Who are you? And if you don't mind me asking, how long have you had that loaf in your sleeve? My name is Camilla, and who are you? Amelia was annoyed that she hadn't answered the second question promptly, as she had actually considered saying yes to the offer of a piece of bread. The rumble of hunger in her belly was definitely not as subtle as before now that she had had a visual of where that delicious smell had been coming from. My name is Amelia, and I'm definitely questioning whether or not I should take your offer. Mostly because I don't trust how long you've had that thing hidden in your sleeve. Also because, as I said before, you're not supposed to be eating in here. Camilla stopped reading and tucked the book by her side, just in case Amelia might try and reach for it. She broke off a piece from her loaf and handed it to Amelia. Her hunger took her over, and almost as soon as it was in her hand, she'd bit into it. Cream and jelly oozing out the sides, spilling down her hand. Camilla chuckled. Maybe it's you who shouldn't be eating in here. You're making a mess. Amelia sat beside Camilla, smiling and nodding. Maybe you're right. Think we could try reading the book together? Taking turns between eating? Yeah, sure, I guess. Just don't get jelly on the pages. That was just the beginning of their friendship. They met in the library almost every day, Camilla with a new bread or pastry in her sleeve and a new book that Ursula picked out every week. They both had the same taste in baked goods and stories. They shared these things and nothing much else. Every time Amelia walked into the library and it smelled of bread, she knew Camilla was already there, ready to travel to a new world with her. It was the only time she didn't feel lonely. It took her longer than it should have, though, to realize that Camilla, being of similar age, she had never actually saw her at school. She'd only assumed that maybe she went to a private school, or maybe it was just they were visiting family for a long while. They never spoke of anything except the spooky books that always drew them to each other. Till one day, Amelia felt that she might want to take this friendship beyond the walls of the library she felt so safe in. Camilla had a way about her that made Amelia feel more and more confident in herself. Every loaf of bread, every pastry filled her with new ideas and wants for a life other than the ones she'd grown so accustomed to. Her daily routine consisted of school, the library, and then home to eat dinner and sleep. Her parents weren't very much present in her life. They mostly worried about work and household chores, nothing much else. So she had been so ingrained in a similar lifestyle now that with Camilla in her life, she yearned for something more. She decided to speak up one day and ask her parents if she could have a friend over. They were both too indifferent to be surprised that Amelia even had any friends to invite over, but they said yes nonetheless. Amelia was excited to get to the library later that day, braver than she'd ever been to ask Camilla to come over. But Camilla wasn't there that day or the next. Actually, a week had eventually gone by without the scent of bread in the library and no sign of Camilla whatsoever. Amelia hadn't read a book in that time, and it was the longest she'd ever gone without a new book to read. She continued to skim through the aisles and eventually found a book that finally caught her attention. That familiar magnetism had finally come back. She picked up the book and gave it a good look over. This particular book was another Hoffman book, but one she'd never seen before, and it looked very worn as though it had been read 1,000 times over. It was another spooky story, but it was slightly more melancholy than the ones she was used to. At the end of almost every chapter, she'd found herself either holding her breath, crying a little, or both. Camilla had yet to show her face in the library again, and Amelia felt that maybe that was why the story had drawn her in. It was like listening to sad songs after a breakup. The day was coming back to finish and return the book. She smelled bread again. She walked briskly to her corner, the wind outside making the weeping willow brush against the window. But Camilla was nowhere to be seen. The familiar smell and the willow against the window made for the perfect but depressing setting for the reading of the last few chapters of the book. Tucked in between the last page and the dedication in the back of the book was a Polaroid picture. It was a picture of Camilla, holding a book in one hand and a loaf of bread with cream and jelly in the other. Written in the space below the picture was July 2nd, 1994 to September 12th, 2010. She flipped over the Polaroid and read, Camilla Hoffman, the spirit behind all of my stories. Amelia sat there in shock. The year was 2011, the day September 12th. If this picture meant what she thought it did, Camilla would have been dead a year ago today. But that didn't make sense. How could she have been dead? There was no way. She'd been here for at least 2 months now. They'd read several books together and shared so many more pastries in that time. It was impossible. Even with all the stories she'd read about ghosts, Amelia never knew if she'd actually believed in them. She'd read that sometimes ghosts are strong enough to leave familiar scents in their wake, but never thought she'd ever experience anything like it. Tears were flowing from her eyes silently. Her first and only true friend was a ghost, one who left without even saying goodbye. Though their relationship hadn't been a deep one, it had awoken things in Amelia she'd never felt before. She pushed herself to read the dedication in the book and realized it was written to Camilla. Apparently, Camilla had been a soft-spoken girl who dreamed of opening a bakery with a library section in it. She'd wanted to fill her library with all of her mother's books because they'd always been her favorite to read. She'd died in her sleep in the old library. She'd had a heart condition that they weren't aware of until it was too late. Amelia got up and asked the librarian if she knew anything about Camilla. The librarian proceeded to tell her all the things she knew and revealed to her that the corner she always sat in was the same corner Camilla claimed as her favorite, and also the corner she'd passed away in. Amelia asked why she'd never seen her around or why she hadn't gone to the local school. Camilla had been homeschooled because her mother traveled so much, and so the only time she'd have to spend in the library was bright and early in the mornings during the weeks that they spent in her mother's hometown. She was also allowed to bring in her favorite pastries from the local bakery because the librarian was a big fan of her mother's and she'd promised to never leave behind a crumb. Camilla had been a loner and a bookworm too, a kindred spirit, someone drawn to the same spot as Amelia. Now knowing this, Amelia's life was changed forever. Something about Camilla had touched her, and having met Camilla in the way that she did haunted her, but in the best way. She developed the same dream Camilla had and grew to have the strongest desire to honor Camilla's spirit by building that bakery with the library in it. Sometimes Camilla's spirit would pop in to smell the smells, and Amelia felt it. It happened like that familiar magnetic feeling she'd got from finding a good book. She made sure to let Amelia know she was honored and proud in that way. Sometimes she wished she'd actually met Camilla in person, but things don't always happen the way you want them to. If only, though.
That was so good. I was laughing at some parts. I was like ready to cry at the end when I found out that she was dead. But it was so good.
And
I really liked it. I love that she was the daughter of your favorite author. That is so cool. I thought this was really fun this week, and I loved your story. And for any of you guys, I would love for you guys to comment and let us know what you guys think.
yeah. Any
We
constructive criticisms as well.
Yes, don't be
I would
rude,
appreciate
but anything to help
constructive.
us, right? Constructive, not rude. But we love you guys so much, and this has been so fun. And we will be posting our next prompt in the next few days. So keep an eye on our social medias. Go ahead and follow us on Instagram and TikTok, and we'll see you guys in the next week's episode.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, bye.
Bye.